Fire was discovered about 350,000 years ago. But what is it? By definition, it's a process in which substances combine chemically with oxygen from the air and give out bright light, heat and smoke. In a controlled state, it's a useful thing. Uncontrolled, it can be the stuff of nightmares. So what does fire need to exist? Well, it needs three simple things. Fuel, which could be a liquid, a gas, a vapor or a solid. Oxygen, usually from the air around us. And ignition, such as a spark from equipment, cigarettes or electrical short. The three elements of fuel, oxygen and ignition are often referred to as the fire triangle. So how do you put a fire out? In simple terms, starve it of fuel or of oxygen. How do you do that? You could use a CO2 fire extinguisher, for example. This essentially deprives the fire of oxygen and so stops the chemical chain reaction from continuing. Same thing happens on a chip pan fire when you cover it with a damp cloth. It starves the fire of oxygen and it goes out. So, it's important to use the correct fire extinguisher on the type of fire you're dealing with. There are 6 classes of fire in total, from Class A through to Class F. Let's have a quick look at the different types of fires and the extinguishers you need to know about. Class A fires include combustible materials such as wood or paper and require either a water, foam or dry powder extinguisher. Class B fires include flammable liquids such as petrol or diesel, and these require either a foam, dry powder, CO2 or wet chemical extinguisher. What about Class C and D? Classes C and D involve flammable gases and burning metals respectively. Both require dry powder fire extinguishers. Class E, which is sometimes missed out of the classification as this is intended for electrical fires, but technically electricity itself doesn't burn, requires either dry powder or CO2 extinguishers. And finally, Class F, which involves cooking oils or cooking fats, requires a wet chemical extinguisher. How does fire spread? Fire spreads by 3 main mechanisms. Firstly, conduction. Fire follows the heat. This occurs when the heat from the fire heats up other materials which then combust. Convection. This is when the fire causes the air to become superheated, and that superheated air travels through the building, often igniting other combustible material. And finally, radiation. This is similar to the rays of the sun and radiates from a fire in straight lines, heating other combustible material to the point of ignition. Okay, science lesson over. What can you do to reduce the risk of fire? Keep sources of fuel to a minimum, like throwing rubbish out each night. Keep sources of ignition to a minimum by maintaining equipment and keeping sources of ignition away from sources of fuel. Ensure staff are adequately trained and aware of fire and what to do in the event of it. And ensure there are adequate fire extinguishers available. So what should you do on discovering a fire in your workplace? Raise the alarm. Tackle the fire if safe and competent to do so. Call the fire brigade. Evacuate the building calmly and safely. Hold a roll call. And do not enter the building again until told to do so. Fire can be dangerous. Take care to prevent and protect against the start and spread of a fire in your workplace.